This year, I wanted our birthday celebration to feel special. I had just reached a big milestone in my career, something I had worked so hard for. It took years of stress, long hours, and countless setbacks, but I finally made it through. I thought, what better way to celebrate than to combine it with our birthday? My boyfriend Charles and I were born in the same month, just a few days apart, so it made sense to do a joint celebration. I'm 34, and he's 38. I decided to book a small private room at a nice restaurant. Not something too flashy, just something intimate and warm. It had soft lighting, comfortable seating, and enough space for a small group. I wanted something cozy but classy, something that reflected how far I had come. We invited 11 people. 4 of them were my local friends, people who had supported me through the ups and downs. The rest were his family members, his mom, some siblings, and a few others I had seen a few times before. Charles offered to take care of the cake and the guest list. I paid to rent the room and agreed to split the food bill with him. It felt fair, and honestly, I didn't mind. I was just happy we were doing something together and that it would be nice for both of us. We had a small argument last year around our birthday. I felt like he didn't put in any effort. He barely planned anything, while I did all the work. Even though I was earning less back then, I still found ways to make his day special. I bought him thoughtful gifts, made a homemade cake, and decorated the apartment with things he liked. I guess I just hoped he would one day match that energy. This year, though, I saw a little more effort from him. He brought a really beautiful cake and even bought me a spice rack, something I had casually mentioned months ago. I didn't expect that gift at all, and it honestly touched me. It made me think, maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year would be good. I dressed up for the evening. I wore a soft cream blouse with lace along the sleeves, and a deep blue skirt that made me feel elegant and grown up. My friends came early and helped me fix my makeup and hair. When Charles arrived, he looked proud. His family showed up shortly after, and for the first hour or so, everything felt right. The room was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and warm conversations. Everyone seemed to be having a good time. Even Charles' mom seemed to be in a good mood, which wasn't always the case. Dinner was great. The food was delicious, and I felt like maybe, for once, I had pulled off a perfect evening. A mix of our worlds coming together. My career success, our shared birthday, our families and friends. I even told myself that maybe this was the start of something more serious between us. Maybe we were growing into a new phase together. Then, the staff brought out the cake. The candles were lit, and everyone pulled out their phones. I didn't want to blow directly on the cake for hygiene reasons, so we agreed to just pretend for the pictures. I stood beside Charles, smiling. I felt proud. Proud of the cake, the setup, the effort, the night. My heart was full. I was holding the cake in my hands carefully when Charles leaned over toward me. At first, I thought he wanted to kiss me or maybe hug me from behind. But no, he grabbed the back of my head and tried to push me forward. I immediately pulled back. "Stop it, Charles," I said, my voice sharp. "Don't do that." But instead of stopping, he laughed. His family started cheering, literally cheering him on like it was a performance. I looked around in disbelief. I was trying to push him off me, but he wasn't letting go. I could feel the pressure of his hand on my neck, forcing me toward the cake. My heart started racing. My friend stood up and tried to stop him, and then he shoved my face right into the cake. My eyes were closed, but I felt the cold cream against my skin, frosting in my eyelashes, cake in my hair. The smell of sugar filled my nose, and everyone around me was laughing. My clothes were stained. My body froze. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't funny. It was humiliating. And the worst part, he tried to do it again. I stood there in complete shock, cake dripping from my chin, frosting all over my eyelashes, and crumbs tangled in my hair. I couldn't even move at first. My hands were shaking, my mind blank. The laughter that filled the room moments ago suddenly felt like knives stabbing into my chest. Then, I heard him laugh. Charles was still laughing. Like nothing happened. Like I was supposed to laugh along. He reached out again, grinning, clearly about to repeat the whole thing like I hadn't just been publicly embarrassed in front of his family and my friends. It was almost like he didn't see me, just some prop in his idea of a funny moment. That's when I slapped him. I didn't think. I didn't plan it. It just happened. I felt my hand move before I even knew what I was doing. It was a quick, sharp slap across his cheek. The room went silent. The kind of silence that presses into your ears and makes your pulse louder than everything else. His smile disappeared. His face went stiff. Everyone stared. And for the first time that night, Charles looked like the one caught off guard. His mother jumped to her feet. "Did you just hit him?" One of my friends immediately stepped between us and said, "No, what he did was wrong. You don't force someone's face into a cake like that." That lit the match. Charles' mom started yelling at my friend, accusing her of being disrespectful and trying to ruin the family moment. My other friends stood up to defend her, and before I knew it, an argument had broken out in the middle of the room. Shouting back and forth. I couldn't even focus. My face was still sticky and cold. My blouse, a soft cream color I had picked so carefully, was stained with red and blue frosting that I knew wouldn't come out. I walked out of the room without saying a word and crossed the main dining floor of the restaurant to find the restroom. Heads turned as I walked by, probably wondering why a grown woman had cake on her face like some kind of slapstick comedy sketch gone wrong. In the bathroom, I finally looked in the mirror. What I saw broke me. There was cake on my neck, in my ears, stuck to my hairline. My makeup was completely destroyed. My eyes were red, not just from the frosting, but from tears I hadn't even noticed falling. I scrubbed my face with wet paper towels, but it only made my blouse wetter. The stains weren't coming out. My whole body was trembling. That was supposed to be my night. My celebration. A joint birthday and a milestone moment for my career. I had worked so hard for it, and now I looked like a joke. Like I didn't matter. When I returned to the room, everyone was quiet. The tension was so thick, I could feel it in my chest. Charles tried to come toward me again. "Babe, come on. It was just a joke. People do that all the time." I held up my hand to stop him. That wasn't a joke. That was assault in front of people I care about. You didn't just embarrass me. You humiliated me and made me feel small. "You slapped me," he said, pointing like I was the one who started everything. "In front of my family. Do you have any idea how that makes you look?" "I don't care how it makes me look," I snapped. "I care about how I felt when you pushed my face into a cake while everyone laughed." I said stop, and you didn't listen. His mom was glaring at me now. His siblings looked uncomfortable. My friends were all standing behind me like a wall of support. I turned to Charles and said, "You and your guests can cover your own food. I'm done here." He looked shocked. "What? You're really going to walk out over this?" "I already did. The moment you shoved my face into that cake, I walked out in my heart. You just didn't notice." My friends insisted on paying for their own meals, but I refused. I pulled out my card and covered them. I didn't want to leave anything unfinished. Then I walked out. They wanted to take me somewhere else, to have a real dinner, to salvage the night. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't go anywhere looking like that. I felt disgusting, physically and emotionally. So instead, they each quietly sent me money to cover what I had spent. That broke me even more. Not because I wanted them to pay, but because they knew I had planned this so carefully, and now I was leaving with nothing but shame. Charles ended up having to pay for himself and his guests, and apparently got charged a cleaning fee because the cake mess got on the floor and furniture. I knew, at that moment, there was no coming back from this. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, wrapped in a robe, hair still damp from a second shower, staring at my ruined blouse on the bathroom counter. No matter how many times I scrubbed at the red and blue frosting stains, They wouldn't come out. That top was one of my favorites, something I wore to interviews, to important meetings, and now it looked like something a child had finger painted. But it wasn't about the blouse. Not really. It was about what it symbolized. I had spent weeks preparing for that night, not just to celebrate our birthdays, but also to mark a major achievement in my career. I had recently hit a personal milestone, something I worked hard for, something I was proud of. And I thought, naively, that I could share that joy with someone I loved. Someone who would celebrate me the way I always celebrated him. But instead of support, I got shame. Instead of laughter with me, there was laughter at me. I expected the texts to start the next morning. And they did. First from Charles. "Hey, can we talk? You left me with your mess. I know you're upset, but you went too far." No apology. No acknowledgement of what he did. Only the fact that I had made a scene. That I had slapped him. That I had ruined his birthday. Then came the message that hit the hardest. "My mom said she never wants to see you again." Like that was supposed to make me feel guilty. Like her opinion still mattered after the way she screamed at my friend for standing up for me. Still, I didn't reply. Later that day, he showed up at my apartment. I didn't answer the door. I watched him through the peephole, pacing, then knocking again. He stayed out there for about 15 minutes before finally slipping a note under the door and walking away. I waited until I was sure he was gone before picking it up. It said, "I know I messed up. I was trying to be funny. It was a stupid joke. But your reaction was extreme. My family thinks you're unstable now. You slapped me in public. You embarrassed me. I didn't mean to ruin your night, but you've ruined our relationship. You could have just laughed it off like everyone else does." That was it for me. There was no understanding. No real remorse. Just a defense of what he did and a passive-aggressive way of blaming me for reacting to it. I texted him one last time. "This is over. I don't care what your family thinks. You humiliated me in front of everyone," and then doubled down instead of apologizing. That slap wasn't just for the cake. It was for every time you ignored how I felt and tried to play it off as a joke. "You're not the man I thought you were." Then I blocked him. He still tried to get through after that. Fake numbers, emails, DMs. He even tried going through one of my friends to get a message to me, asking if I'd just apologized to his mom so we can move on. Move on? After what? He wanted me to say sorry for slapping him, but couldn't say sorry for shoving my face into a cake like I was some clown in a comedy show. He wanted me to explain myself to his family, but didn't once defend me to them. I was supposed to apologize to the very people who stood and watched me get embarrassed and laughed about it. It wasn't just one bad moment. It was a window into what my future would look like if I stayed with him. A future where I'd constantly be explaining to others why the man I was with thought hurting or humiliating me was just funny. A future where he never really stood up for me because keeping his family entertained was more important than my dignity. I started thinking about everything that led up to this point. Last year, I made less money than him and still pulled off a beautiful birthday for him, planned everything down to the last detail because I wanted him to feel special. I didn't just give him a cake. I gave him thoughtfulness. He gave me frosting in my eyelashes and public shame. Sure, he got me a spice rack this year, which I appreciated. But that doesn't cancel out what he did. You don't get points for buying a gift if you're also the reason someone ends the night in tears. I started to feel this overwhelming grief, not just for the relationship, but for the image I had of him in my mind. The man I thought was thoughtful. The man I thought respected me. That man didn't show up to our birthday. Someone else did. And that someone didn't deserve a place in my life anymore. I didn't just block him on my phone. I unfollowed his family on social media. Removed the photos, cleared the messages. It felt symbolic, but it was necessary. I needed to create space where healing could begin. I cried for days afterward, not just from sadness, but from frustration, from disappointment, from sheer disbelief. How could someone love you and still think it's okay to humiliate you? The days after the breakup felt like walking through thick fog. I'd wake up and forget for a moment that everything had changed. That Charles wasn't just my ex now. He was someone who'd shown me a part of himself I could never unsee. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, and that awful moment would replay like a movie in my mind, his hands forcing me down toward the cake, the cheers from his family, the sticky frosting in my hair, and the stunned silence when I finally slapped him. There were times I questioned myself. Was the slap too much? Could I have just walked away? Should I have waited until we were alone? But every time I tried to rationalize it, I'd picture the look on my friends' faces. The panic, the anger, the way they rushed to stop him. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't overreacting. I had witnesses, people who genuinely cared about me and stood up for me when he didn't. One of my friends, Maya, came over a few days later with takeout and a bottle of wine. She sat with me on the couch, and after a long silence, she said, "I know you're blaming yourself right now. But what he did, that wasn't love. That was dominance disguised as a joke." I started crying again. She hugged me and added, "You didn't ruin that night. He did. You tried to create a beautiful celebration, and he turned it into a circus. And for what? A few laughs." That was the word that stuck with me, dominance. Because looking back, that's exactly what it felt like. He didn't just shove my face into the cake. He forced me to submit. In front of his family. In front of my friends. Like it was all one big performance. And the worst part, he expected me to laugh about it. After Maya left, I started journaling. Something I hadn't done in years. I wrote down everything, every memory, every feeling, every tiny detail I could remember from that night. Not just to vent, but to remind myself that what I experienced was real. I even wrote down the things I'd been brushing off for years. Like the time he joked about my weight in front of his cousin, then said, "Relax, babe, you know I'm kidding." Or when I got promoted last year and he said, "Don't let it go to your head, it's just corporate fluff." Or the way he always acted awkward around my friends, but never missed a chance to impress his own family, even if it meant making me the butt of the joke. It all came rushing back now. Little things that didn't feel so little anymore. Then came the guilt. Not about slapping him. No, I stood by that. But for ignoring the signs. For letting it get this far. For romanticizing a version of him that only existed in my mind. I had fallen in love with potential, not reality. But guilt slowly gave way to clarity. I realized I didn't miss him. I missed the idea of what I thought we had. The fantasy I built up in my head. The version of our relationship where we were equals, supportive, kind, and loving. But that's not who we were. Because if someone truly loves you, they don't humiliate you in front of a room full of people and then tell you you ruined the night. He hadn't contacted me again after I blocked him everywhere. I think part of him assumed I'd come around eventually, that I'd feel bad enough to reach out. Maybe that I'd even apologize. But the silence was healing. I used the time to focus on myself again. I threw myself into work, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for putting my energy into something that fulfilled me. I also started therapy. Just a few sessions to unpack what happened and talk it out with someone neutral. My therapist told me something that really stuck with me. You didn't slap him to hurt him. You slapped him to protect yourself. That hit deep. It wasn't about violence or drama. It was about a moment of panic, of being physically and emotionally cornered. I was trying to reclaim control when he had stripped it away in front of everyone. My therapist also said that boundaries often get challenged by the people closest to us, and that sometimes standing your ground looks like conflict to those who benefit from your silence. Charles wanted me to shrink, to laugh along, to take the joke and play nice for his family's approval. But I wasn't going to do that anymore. I wasn't going to apologize for reacting to something that hurt me. I wasn't going to excuse his behavior just because we had history. I deserved better. I still do. And the more time passed, the more I realized that the night I thought would be my worst memory actually turned into something powerful. It became the moment I stopped making excuses for someone else's bad behavior. It became the moment I walked away, for good. About 2 weeks after everything happened, I received a text from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was spam. But then I saw the name signed at the bottom. It was from his mother. She wrote, "I hope you reflect on what you did to my son. That slap was unacceptable. He only wanted to make you laugh. You embarrassed him and disrespected our family. I thought you were better than that." I just stayed at the screen for a full minute, not even blinking. "No, how are you doing?" "No, sorry for how things went down." Just blame. Just guilt. Just another person trying to shame me for reacting to being humiliated in public. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. But I screenshot the message and sent it to Maya. She called me immediately. "Is she for real?" she said, almost shouting through the phone. "He assaulted you with a cake in front of everyone, and she's mad you slapped him after he tried to do it again." It felt good to hear someone else say it out loud. Sometimes, when you're hurt, all you need is for someone to validate that yes, what you experienced was real, and no, you're not crazy for being upset. The crazy part is, if he had pulled me aside after the party, looked me in the eyes, and sincerely said, "I'm sorry. I didn't think. I embarrassed you and I regret it," there might have been a tiny crack left open. But instead, I got a guilt trip. A mother who believed her son was the victim because I had the nerve to stand up for myself. And a boyfriend, now ex, who said I ruined my image. As if my reputation mattered more than my dignity. A few days later, I heard from a mutual friend that Charles was telling people I overreacted. That I made a scene over something playful. That I was dramatic. He was rewriting the story. And for a second, I panicked. I thought, what if everyone believes him? But then I remembered, people who know me, who really know me, saw what happened. They were in that room. They saw how hard I fought to keep the evening graceful. They saw me walk through a packed restaurant with cake all over my face while his family sat there pretending like nothing had happened. I didn't have to prove anything. Still, it hurt. I had been with Charles for years. We'd spent birthdays together, holidays, ordinary weekends binge-watching shows and building IKEA furniture. He knew about my childhood, my struggles, my dreams. But the moment I broke his illusion of control, he turned me into the enemy. And now, I was starting over. I wish I could say I bounced back right away. But healing isn't linear. Some days, I'd be on top of the world, going to the gym, taking long walks, even smiling again. And other days, I'd pass a birthday card aisle in the store and feel tears sting my eyes. It wasn't just the relationship that ended. It was the illusion. The version of love I thought I had. The future I thought we were building. But slowly, I was rediscovering myself. One evening, I sat in my apartment. Just me, no noise, no text from him, no drama. I poured myself a glass of wine and realized how peaceful it was. And I thought, this is what safety feels like. No one teasing me. No one invalidating my feelings. No one trying to perform for an audience at my expense. Just silence, and me learning to breathe again. That night, I posted a private message to my close friends on social media. I didn't give details. I just said thank you for standing by me, for helping me clean up my face, my clothes, and my heart. The next day, I woke up to dozens of messages of support. People shared their own stories of partners who humiliated them as a joke, stories of breakups that hurt, but were necessary, and even some people who admitted they once laughed when it happened to someone else and now saw how cruel it actually was. It reminded me that I wasn't alone, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away without making excuses for someone who never deserved you. And I did that. I walked away, with frosting in my hair, yes, but with my head held high. The days after I ended things with Charles were some of the hardest of my life. There was relief, yes, Relief that I no longer had to pretend everything was okay. Relief that I didn't have to keep swallowing my hurt just to keep the peace. But there was also a deep sadness, like a heavy cloud hanging over my chest. I kept replaying that night in my head. The cake. The laughter that wasn't really laughter. The way he forced me to bow my face into it while everyone watched. I thought about the red and blue stains on my blouse that wouldn't come out. More than that, I thought about how betrayed I felt, not just by Charles, but by the people around him who cheered it on. What hurt me most was realizing how little he respected me, how little he valued me. I thought we were partners, but that night, I was a punchline. I had to grieve. Grieve the relationship I thought I had. Grieve the future I'd imagined. But as the weeks went by, something else started to grow inside me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I started focusing on my career again, throwing myself into the work I loved. Every milestone felt like a small victory. I celebrated them quietly, for myself. No fancy parties, no mixed crowds, just me and my achievements. My friends were my anchor through it all. Maya, especially, stood by me, reminding me of my worth when I doubted it. They helped me see that one bad night, one toxic relationship, did not define me. Slowly, I found my confidence again. One afternoon, I walked past the restaurant where the birthday party happened. My heart raced. I thought about going inside to see if I could find closure, but I stopped myself. I realized I didn't need to go back. That place held pain, but I held the power now. I was no longer the girl with cake on her face. I was a woman who had stood up for herself. I'm still healing, and some days are harder than others. But I've learned some important things from this. First, love isn't supposed to hurt you. Not like that. Not in front of your friends and family. Not with laughter masking cruelty. Second, it's okay to say no. To demand respect. To walk away from people who don't value you. Third, sometimes the best celebrations are the quiet ones, where you honor yourself first. I don't know if Charles will ever truly understand the damage he caused that night. He says I never loved him, but love isn't about making someone the joke at a party. Love is about kindness, respect, and caring enough not to humiliate the person who trusts you most. I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret slapping him when he crossed the line. And I'm not going to apologize for protecting my dignity. If you've ever been in a situation like mine, where someone you cared about hurt you under the guise of jokes or traditions, know this: you deserve better. You deserve respect. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is say goodbye and start over. Thank you for listening to my story. Maybe it will help someone else see they are not alone, and that it's okay to put yourself first. Thanks so much for listening to my story. If you've ever been through something similar or just want to share your thoughts, please drop a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more real stories about life, love, and everything in between.